Welcome to the First Hebrew Primer, Chapter 15. Let's dive in with the vocabulary. We begin in the upper right with the verb ahav, love, ahav, to love. Below that, ach means but or only. It's a conjunction, ach. Sounds a lot like the word for brother, ach, but that ends it with a chet as opposed to this is the final kaf. Below that, we have the word basar, flesh or meat. Basar. The word gavul means border or like territory, like the border of a nation. Gavul. Another verb down here, yatsa, means to go out or to go forth. And then the word kavod means glory or honor. In the upper left, we have the word kisei, which means seat or throne. Kisei. Below that, mincha. Mincha, a gift or offering. Tzon is the word for flock. It's a collective singular, tzon. Then there's an adjective here, katan, means a little or small, katan. Then the verb to judge is shafat. Now this is not the noun judge, this is the verbal form, to judge. And then lastly, toch, means in the middle of. So now that we've looked at the vocabulary, what I'd like to do is step back and take a look at all the different pronouns in English. Some of these we've covered the equivalents of in Hebrew, some of them we haven't. The main lesson for this week is one of the pronouns. So I thought it'd be good to let's do an overview of all the pronouns, and then we'll dive into some specific pronouns that we'll learn in Hebrew. So what is a pronoun? What is the definition from the Merriam-Webster dictionary? A pronoun is any small set of words in a language that are used as substitutes for noun or noun phrases whose reference are named or understood in the context. Another way of thinking about this is that pronouns are kind of like substitute teachers or pinch hitters or the stunt doubles of the grammatical world, right? They take the place of the noun. When the noun's tired or it's too dangerous, we put in the pronoun and let it take its place. No, I'm just kidding. It's not really like that. The reason why we use pronouns is because we're lazy, and it's a lot easier to speak using pronouns than to not use pronouns. If you don't believe me, you should try to speak without using pronouns for the next 10 minutes. Okay, now there's two parts to anytime you run across a pronoun in Hebrew, in English too, you need to know what the pronoun is, right? Is it third masculine singular? Is it first common plural? Like, what is the pronoun? And then you need to know what its antecedent is. What is the noun that it's taking the place of in the sentence? So here's a quick example. Moses struck the rock. He hit it with the staff. Now you could communicate this idea without using any pronouns, right? You could say Moses struck the rock. Moses hit the rock with the staff. But that gets pretty cumbersome. So we like to use pronouns to make speech easier. That's why pronouns are usually really short words. And you need to know what the pronoun is. He is a third masculine singular pronoun. What's the referent? Well, where's the nearest row? That goes back to Moses, right? And it goes back to rock. So you do the same thing in Hebrew when you run across a pronoun. Okay, what is it? What's the referent? Now there are lots of different types of pronouns. We're going to go through them. There are the personal pronouns. These are the most common. You are already familiar with these, at least with some of them, the independent personal pronouns. And in English, the form of the personal pronoun is determined by four things. The function of the pronoun, the person, gender, and number. What do I mean by each of those? Well, by function, I mean, is the pronoun functioning as the subject of a verb, the object of a verb, or the object of a preposition, or is it a possessive? We have different sets of pronouns depending on the function. So let's take the pronoun I. If it's the subject of the verb, we use I. If it's the object, we use me. If it's a possessive, we use my, right? I, me, my. Three different sets of pronouns for the first common singular. So pronouns can be either first, second, or third person, right? I, you, or he, she, or it. That's first person I, second person you, third person he, she, or it. They can also be singular or plural, right? I or we, you or y'all. Now in English, we're deficient in that we use the same second person pronoun for singular and plural. It wasn't always this way, right? English used to have a second person singular pronoun, thou. Thou, thee, thine. But those have dropped out of use, and you used to only be the plural, but now it functions for both the singular and the plural. And that does create some ambiguity in some contexts, and in reading the Bible too. And then there's third person, he, she, or it, or they. So this is just the paradigm of English personal pronouns. You already know these, just categorizing them for you here. We have the subjective, objective, and possessive. You've already learned the Hebrew subjective pronouns. These are the independent personal pronouns, right? Ani, anachnu, ata, atem. You've already learned all these. What you're going to cover in this lesson are the possessive pronouns. We're going to look at possessive pronouns in particular. And we're going to learn the form of the objective, because in Hebrew it's the same form for the objective and for the objective and possessive pronouns. Okay, English also has, in addition to personal pronouns, we have demonstrative pronouns. Those are pronouns that point to other nouns. And there are two types of demonstrative pronouns in English. The near demonstrative, like this or these, like I could say this computer, or these pens. Or far demonstrative pronouns, something that's farther away from me, like that bookshelf or those books. Now you've already learned these words in Hebrew, right? This is zeh or zot. These are eleh. So these are ones you already know. The relative pronoun. Relative pronouns in English introduce a relative clause, which modifies the previous noun. We use these all the time. In English, the relative pronouns are that, who, whom, whose, which, and what. So we have a number of different words that can function as a relative pronoun. Here's an example of it in context, right? The man who went to the moon. Who here is a relative pronoun. It introduces the relative clause. So you can think of the man. Well, which man? Who went to the moon. It further describes the man. Or you could say the school that D.L. Moody founded. So the school, which one? Here's the relative pronoun, D.L. Moody founded. Then there is the interrogative pronoun. These ask questions, right? Who, whom, what, which, when, where, and whose. Now, in English, these pronouns look a lot like the relative pronoun, right? They look identical. But in Hebrew, they're clearly distinguished. In fact, you've learned some of these interrogative pronouns, right? The word who is me in Hebrew, right? Me. Who? Me. The word what is ma. What? Ma. Where the relative pronoun is asher. It's a completely different word in Hebrew. So in English, they look the same, but in Hebrew, they don't. So an interrogative pronoun who introduces a question, right? Who is going to Israel this summer? Or what time is it? Okay, so now we're getting into the heart of this particular lesson, possessive pronouns. In English, a possessive pronoun is a separate word. We count it as a separate word. Like if we wanted to say his horse, how many words are in that phrase? We'd say two, right? His and horse. In Hebrew, like with a definite article and bound prepositions, possessive pronouns are not separate words, but they are a syllable that is added to the end of a word. So we have here the word horse, sus. What if I wanted to say his horse? What I would do is add a syllable to the end of the word. In this case, it's a holem vav, and it's pronounced suso. The O is the word his, and sus is still horse. So we translate that his horse. So this is what the paradigm looks like. Here's the third masculine singular, suso, his horse. And see how if we change that final syllable, it changes the pronoun. So susa is her horse. Susecha, your horse, second masculine singular. Susech, your horse. Susi, my horse, and so on all the way down. Now you'll notice there's a similarity between the independent personal pronouns and these pronoun suffixes. Like, for example, the first common singular pronoun I in Hebrew is ani or anochi. Hear that E ending? And that's, of course, E is the first common singular pronominal suffix. They don't always line up, but like, look at first common plural. The independent pronoun is anachnu. So that nu ending shows up at the end of the word here. This is susenu, is our horse. So there are some of those connections you can make, but these are this series of endings you definitely need to memorize. And I'm going to give you a tool to be able to memorize it. Let me tell you why this is so important. These pronoun suffixes, these possessive pronouns, are also the same set of pronouns that we use for object suffixes, objects of verbs, and they are all over the Hebrew Bible. They are so common, and you need to be able to know these down cold. Now, I'm going to show this to you. This isn't really in your lesson yet, but we'll see very shortly that you can attach these pronoun suffixes to prepositions. And so the way that I memorized these pronoun suffixes is the way I'm going to teach you is I attached the pronoun suffix to the preposition lamed. Lamed, of course, is the bound preposition that means two or four. And you can put these pronoun endings, you can attach them to a preposition, then it becomes the object of the preposition. So in the third masculine singular here, this is lo, means for him. So the lamed means for, the holam vav means him. And what I'm really interested in you getting now is this memorizing these suffixes, because these are the same suffixes that go on nouns to make them possessive nouns. And that's really what this lesson is about. So the way that I learned this, I've called affectionately the lamed poem. And just like with the verbs, I've organized it the same way. So third masculine singular, third feminine singular, second masculine singular, second feminine singular, first common singular. So it's 3, 2, 1 singular, 3, 2, 1 plural. So you have to know the order in which this goes in. Once you know the order, this is just a little chant for you to be able to learn the ending. So here we go. Here's the lamed poem. I'm going to do it really slowly first, and then we'll speed it up. So it's lo, la, laka, lak, li, la, hem, la, hen, la, chem, la, ken, lanu. See how it's accented a little differently there? So you have to say that a little bit differently. So let's go ahead and say that again here. We have lo, la, laka, lak, li, la, hem, la, hen, la, chem, la, ken, lanu. Now I'm going to speed it up. We'll do it one more time. You can do it like a chant. Lo, la, laka, lak, li, la, hem, la, hen, la, chem, la, ken, lanu. Now if you can memorize that and you're able to write it out with the parsing, you will have saved yourself a lot of work. Because you'll know them down cold. So do memorize this. Memorize the lamed poem. You might be quizzed on it. Make sure you know it. And you are going to be using this the rest of your life reading Hebrew. So this is really key for you to be able to get down. And if I ever run across any of you in person, I might ask you, hey, do you know the lamed poem? It's one of those poems that you should, frame. Put in your house. Read to your children when you're walking by the way, when you're sitting at the dinner table, no, I'm just kidding. You don't have to do all that, but do memorize it. It is really important for you to be able to know. Okay, now, some important things to know about these possessive endings that we just learned. They attach to the word pair form of the noun. You may remember that the word pair form of the noun looks a little bit different in some cases. Like, for example, the word house, bayit, that AYI diphthong reduces to tsere yod when it's the word pair form, right? To bait, like beit lechem. It's that word pair form that you attach the pronoun suffixes to. So beiti is my house, beitenu, our house, beitechem, y'all's house. So that's the key, is to know that the form of the word that's used when you attach a pronoun to it is the word pair form. Okay, another important feature to know. When you see a hey at the end of a word, you might wonder, this comment's hey, how do I know if that's a feminine singular ending or if it's a pronoun suffix? Like a good example is the word na'ar means young man. The word na'ara means young woman. Well, na'ara means her young man. This her is a pronoun suffix. It's the third feminine singular, her, attached to the noun na'ar. Well, how do you distinguish between these two forms? They're vocalized slightly differently. The main way you can tell is if you see a dot in the final hey, that tells you that it's a pronominal suffix, that it's a possessive pronoun suffix. And you should translate it her, as opposed to being the ending for the first, for the feminine singular noun. So that's really key. That dot, it's called a mapik, is distinguishes between those two things. Okay. There are some other spelling changes that take place when pronouns are attached to, possessive pronouns are attached to a noun. Most of these can be summarized by saying they use the word pair form of the noun. But just to highlight some of these, the noun am, right, people, it takes an extra dagesh, an extra dot, before you put the pronoun ending on it. So don't let that throw you off. The noun davar, we use the word pair form, right? Devar, to attach the pronoun suffix to, like devari, my word, devaracha, your word, and so on. Devaro, his word. So again, this is using the word pair form to attach the pronoun suffix to. This is true with a feminine singular noun, like adama is the word for land. We use the word pair form as admat, and notice that's what we use to put the pronoun suffix on. Admati is my land. Admatecha, your land, and so on. So that final hey strengthens to the tav before the pronoun suffix. Now, some nouns, these are seglet nouns, eretz, these are irregular, and they actually change their vocalization a bit more. They don't change in the word pair form, but they do change when you put a pronoun suffix on it. And there is a whole explanation as to why this is linguistically. I think it's probably easier for you just to know that this change takes place. So the segels drop out and you get an A vowel under the aleph, and it's artsi is my land. Artsecha, your land. So this is worth spending a little bit more time on, because that could really throw you off when those vowels change on you. This is just the way the Hebrew language works here with these. They're called seglet nouns. When they're inflected with a possessive suffix, they'll change to a regular short vowel under the first root consonant. Most often it's an A vowel, like a batak. Sometimes it's a hirik. Sometimes it's a holum. There are differences depending on the noun. But take a close look at that. The word pair form of father, av is the word for father, right? The word pair form is avi, and we use that hirik yod for adding the pronoun suffix to, right? Avicha. That yod is going to be there because it's part of the word pair form. Now, there is a distinction between avi, the word pair form. See how the first syllable shortens as well? And that's because it's being attached to, in the word pair form, it's being attached to a whole other word, and the accent shifts to that final word. Where here, when it's a pronoun suffix, the accent's not shifting off that final syllable, and so you still get the long comments that long A vowel under the aleph. So you can actually distinguish these two forms. This first one is, this word pair form is father of. This one down here is my father. The only difference is that combination vowel versus the full long A. Just as a reminder, when is a word or a noun considered definite? Well, if it has the definite article, if it's a proper name, or if it has a pronoun suffix. If there's a possessive pronoun attached to the end of it, it's considered definite. So here's some examples. The word ear, city, this is not definite. This is a city. If you put the definite article on it, ha'ir, it's definite. If you have a pronoun suffix, iri, my city, that's definite. Or if it's a proper name like Yerushalayim, it's considered definite. Okay, inseparable prepositions with possessive endings. An inseparable preposition can be attached to any noun with a possessive ending. So here you have, for example, the word my father, and you want to add a lamed to it. You could say lo'avi, to my father, or ka'avi, like my father. Or here's the word my house, beiti, my house. You could say baveti, in my house. So the first bait is in, then you have bait, the noun is house, and then the e is my. In my house. It's pretty amazing you can have a whole phrase like that, in my house, just in one word in Hebrew, baveti. Or here's to my house, leveti. So same principle there. So there's a lot in this lesson. Take your time going through it. And please let me know if you have any questions.